Hey, my senior year in high school, my job after school was a bartender. Okay, in Texas, you just have to be 18, and they let you be a bartender. And so I worked at the local brewery. It was called Nine Band Brewery. I had some regulars. I had some guys that's Bobby, and I forget the other guy's name, but some bikers that always came through. It was a fun job. And so fast forward 3 years later, the guy that owned it, he was a local guy. He was a family friend. I played football with his son. He was the football president for like our high school booster club. Like he was just a guy that was part of the community. And so 3 years later, I'm graduating college, and I'm graduating right in the middle of COVID. And so all companies put a freeze on hiring new people. And I'm like, dude, what do? I thought I had a financial advising job lined up. That was out the door. So I moved to Texas. I moved back to Dallas, where I'm from. And I just ended up living with one of my mentors. His name was Jimmy. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, what do? What's next? And so I hit up my family friend that owned the brewery. And I'm like, hey, man, do you have any jobs that I can just work as I look to find a job? And he's like, dude, I'm actually opening up a sales position. Why don't you come on by? And so I'm like, okay, this will be cool. And he starts telling me the job, and he's like, I was also a financial advisor, so you could kind of get certified as you're a salesman, and if you want to go do that, that's fine too. And so I'm thinking, wow, this is great. I get some money right now to kind of work towards my career. This is going to be awesome. So I go back home, and I'm like, Jimmy, dude, I think I just got the job. I've only been here a week. I already got a job. I'm kind of killing it. And he's like, why don't you just wait a little bit? Okay, don't take the first job that comes. Why don't you get your name out there, get some more interviews going this week, and then if you still want to take it after a week or two, go do that. I was like, okay. So that week I do an interview with StuMo, and I end up deciding I want to go work for StuMo, and I'm so glad I did, because not more than a month after that, my dad shoots me a text. He's like, hey, did you see the article about our family friend? And I'm like, no, what happened? And I opened the article, and the guy that owned the brewery, who was, I played football with his son, who was going to hire me, who I was going to work for coming out of college, was convicted and tried for murder. Dude was convicted and tried. He is in prison for the rest of his life for murder. He was a financial advisor as well as a business owner. He started embezzling money and funneling it into his business, wanting to make more and more money. His clients started to notice some things were getting sketchy, and he thought his only way out was to take him out. This guy was convicted and tried for murder, and I was this close to working for him for my first ever job coming out of college. I mean, it was crazy. And so I think back, and I'm like, okay, what led this guy to get to that point? He seemed like a nice guy. He seemed like a dude that cared about his community. But just over time, just little bit by little bit, he veered and went so far as to kill another person. It was because his life was centered around money. He had to make more. He had to have more and more control. And when the lies started stacking up, he thought his only way out was to murder somebody. Man, when I think about what's at the center of my life, I typically don't think it's going to lead me to killing another person. But man, the thing about whatever you put at the center of your life, it's going to lead you somewhere that's either going to be towards God or away from God. What is at the center of your life? What in your life dictates how you spend your time, who you spend your time with, what you do with your mornings, your nights, your winter breaks, your summer breaks, your major, your future job? What is it that drives your decisions? If you were to go back in my life from about high school all the way through my freshman year of college, I would say the thing that was at the center of my life was my desire to be successful in what I did and be seen as a success, and honestly just to chase as many girls as I could. Like, those were the two things that ruled my life. That was at the center of my life. I know, it wasn't the best. And it wasn't until my freshman year I met an older guy on the team, and his life just looked different. How he spent his time, his habits, the way he talked about others, the way he just thought, it was completely different. It was because Jesus was at the center of his life. We're in the middle of a series called G.O.A.T, Lessons from the Greatest of All Time. And we're learning, hey, how does Jesus tell us to live? What is Jesus' message all about? And the first week we talked about how Jesus helps us in our anxiety. And last week we talked about how do we begin walking with God. And this week, man, we're going to be talking about how we can have Jesus at the center of our lives and what that even looks like. But before we do that, I got a question for you guys. I want to talk with the people around you. What in your life do you devote the most time and attention to? Talk with the people around you. All right. Bring it back. Hey, y'all, I got one message for you guys tonight. Center your life around Christ. Center your life around Christ. So I told you when I graduated college, I lived with one of my high school mentors. His name was Jimmy. Jimmy is a guy who, for the last 30 years, he's just started up companies and sold them for millions and tens of millions of dollars. He's incredibly successful. He's a hard-nosed dude, like a little rough around the edges. We played pickup basketball, and like if I fouled him too hard, he's just giving me a straight elbow the next play. Like he doesn't play around. And this is a picture of me and him when I was in high school. Awesome dude, awesome businessman. He knows what he's about. And so I'm living with him after I graduate. And one day, I'm just sitting there in his house, big house, nice neighborhood, suburb of Dallas, and this guy, the neighbor, comes walking up to the front door, and he knocks on the door, super angry. He's like, boom, 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 and I'm like, uh-oh, something's about to happen. So Jimmy opens the door ever so calmly, and the guy, like, he's got that, like, nervous energy, like, he's ready to get something off his chest, and he's like, hey, is that your truck that's parked in the side of my yard every day? I'm thinking, uh-oh, that was my truck that's parked on the side of his yard every day. What could happen? Like, did some oil spill into his yard? I don't think I parked on his grass. Like, I made sure I'm not parking on the grass, okay? These people take their yards seriously in this neighborhood, so I'm not going to do that. But he goes, hey, that truck, there was a coyote hiding under that truck this morning. And when I let out my Shih Tzu, this coyote got after my Shih Tzu and tore it up. I grabbed the Shih Tzu, I rushed to the vet, the ER vet, and I give it to him, and they do surgery, and it doesn't make it. My Shih Tzu died because a coyote that was hiding under your truck, and I'm out $10,000 for the vet bill. So what are you going to do about it? So I hear this. I'm fresh out of college. I don't have debt, but I don't got money. And I'm thinking, this might go bad. Like, Jimmy throws me to the wolves here, thinking, hey, you shouldn't have parked there. Here, talk to my kid right here. Like, this could go really bad. But Jimmy just so calmly just answers, man, $10,000, that's a lot. You know, if you would have just given me the dog, I'd have shot it and put it out of its misery for 100. We'll make sure we don't park there anymore, but man, have a great rest of the day. Close the door on him. Hey, Jimmy wasn't playing around. Jimmy meant business, okay? Jimmy's been in over hundreds of fights in his life. This dude was a scrapper. He wasn't afraid of some neighbor that had a Shih Tzu dog, okay? It's not helping your intimidation, okay, coming in like that. Jimmy, what this guy didn't know is Jimmy grew up on a ranch. And so his whole life, for the first 18, 20 years, he raised animals. And when that time came in their life for them to become our food, he took care of them himself. Okay, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We all eat well. But Jimmy was a rancher, man. That was part of his core identity. And even though he's 30 years down the road, he's living in a suburb of Dallas, he still lived out of that rancher identity. So much of what we do is determined by who we believe we are. Your identity determines your actions. Who are you, and what are you about? Someone who lives out their identity, you will tell by the choices that they make. Like someone who like embraces the identity of, hey, I'm a swimmer. Like they're gonna have the caps on. They're gonna eat a lot of spaghetti. They're probably gonna live in a house with a bunch of swimmers, and they're gonna be posting those media day pictures in the Speedos. Okay, that's just what swimmers do. Brian, maybe. That's just what swimmers do. Someone who embraces that identity of a Kappa, okay? A Kappa, they're going to load their resume with clubs, accolades, positions. They're going to be going for all the spots. And yeah, and I don't really know what the other stereotypes are for Kappa, okay? I don't know what else. You know, DG, you can tell, all right? You can tell by the choices someone makes. If someone's a football player, man, you're going to know. They're going to be coming in here. They're going to have that Arizona sweatshirt on, okay? They're going to be rocking the team-issued gear. They're going to be sitting in the back with their heads down right now, not trying to be... I'm just messing. Hey, you can tell who someone is by the choices they make. Someone whose core identity is a Christ follower, you will tell by the choices that they make. Man, look at this verse that the Bible uses to talk about this. It's Galatians 2:20. It says this, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And this life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. What I love about this verse is the Bible says, hey, when you start following Christ, when you turn and trust in Jesus and follow him, the old you is dead. The old you, the guy that lived had no self-control, that didn't care about how his decisions affected others, that guy is dead. The new you is Christ. The girl that had to have validation from others and who was always anxious and worried about how she fit in a group or if she was making the right decisions, that person's dead, and the new you is Christ. Now, Christ lives in you. When you decide to follow Jesus, you become part of God's family. And when you become part of God's family, you make the choices that God would have us do. Your identity determines your actions. Who are you? And what are you about? What identity is central in your life that all your other decisions flow from that identity? Like I said, my sophomore year is when I went all in my faith and turned and trusted and followed Jesus. And it was a battle every single day. Like every day I woke up and I had the choice, do I live from the old me that was only worried about what I wanted and I didn't care about anybody else, or do I live in the identity of a Christ follower, the new me? Man, it was hard. It was a battle. Some days I failed. Other days I was walking victoriously. But when I think about every single day, like I needed to read the Bible every day to remind myself, who am I and how do I even live this new life? Like that was my lifeline. Even to this day, I still got to do that. If you want to center your life around Christ, you got to remind yourself of who you are, your new identity in Christ, because your identity determines your actions. Who are you and what are you about? Center your life around Christ. Center your life around Christ. Look at the second half of this verse. I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, the Bible, it describes two different ways we can live. We can either live in the flesh, which in the Bible, it's not talking about just in our skin and bones and muscle, but it's talking about what we just naturally do if we're not trying to follow God. You don't have to teach a toddler how to be selfish with his toys. You don't have to teach us how to be lazy. That's usually our default. But in order for us to live as God would want, man, we got to live by faith. And living by faith is seeing what does the Bible say, what does Jesus command us to live, and then living by that, even if we don't think it's going to be the most rewarding or most fun thing for us, because God knows better than we do. That is living by faith versus living by flesh. And it's a hard thing to learn how to do, okay? Because like when you start following Christ, it's something completely different than how the rest of the world lives and thinks. And like I think about whenever we learn how to do something new, like there's ways that humans learn best. And so like you think about a doctor, someone who's wanting to be a surgeon, they're going to study their biology textbook to a T. Like they're going to know where the heart is, all the veins, the femur, the lemur, the back, the traps, the biceps, the triceps, any other muscle. Those are the only ones I know about. But they're going to know where all those are at. But just knowing the book, that's not going to be enough for them to be a great surgeon. They've got to follow under somebody who's done it, who's living it out, who, when their day-to-day life, they are looking at real examples from the biology textbook, and they're like, hey, when you see this in a patient, you do this. And when they do that, man, they're going to be an excellent surgeon. I think about somebody that wants to be an excellent lawyer. They got to know their law. Like, they got to pass that bar exam. They got to know if they're going corporate, criminal. Like, they got to know the ins and outs. But if they want to be an excellent lawyer, man, they've got to see somebody else living that out who is already doing it and who's much wiser than them. A lawyer who knows which judge is looking for different things, who knows when I see the jury start acting like this, I go in like this, who knows all the ins and outs that you don't learn from just reading the book. Why would we not take this same approach when it comes to growing in our faith? Like, it's the way that we learn best. And so why would we not know our playbook, know the book, the Bible, and then get around somebody that's a little bit wiser, that's living it out, that has taken what we read in the Bible and applied it to their lives and just gleaned some wisdom from it? Those who are successful in business, in life, in school, are people who do that. They study the material, but then they also get around people that have done it and know how to teach. If we want to be strong in our walk with God, we should do the same. I think about my buddy Jackson. If you guys know Jackson Dunn, he just moved back here to Tucson about a month ago. He was a teak here. And Jackson's the type of guy that just goes all in at whatever he does. Like, anything that Jackson does, it's 110%. Like, right now, he's driving Porsches around Daytona Beach with his dad. That's just an afternoon for the Dunn family. I don't know, okay? It's a little different. But Jackson, the last year, he said, hey, I want to train to run a half Ironman. And I know we got some runners in here, but a half Ironman, you start off by swimming a mile. Okay, so Brian, is that a lot for you? I know that might not be a lot for you, but that's a lot, okay? Swimming a mile. If you think about the lap pool, was that 25 or 50 meters in a lap? 25. Man, that's 25 a mile. That's a lot of back and forths, okay? My engineers can help me out there. That's a lot of back and forths. So you get done swimming a mile, and then after that, you go and bike 50 miles. That's like going from here to Mexico, to Nogales. And then after you finish that, you finish it off with a good old half marathon, 13-mile strut in the park. And then that's when you finish your half Ironman. And so Jackson, man, he knows he wants to do this. He's a guy that goes all in on everything he does. And so when he says, hey, I want to train for a half Ironman, you know what he did? He didn't just YouTube, how do I train for a half Ironman? He sought out a coach who was incredible at running Ironmans and even could teach others. And he got a playbook from the coach. Like, he got a day-by-day schedule from the coach. Like, look at this picture. I asked him for a picture. This is him at the race. And the schedule was insane. Here, go forward one. This is what it says. And it's kind of hard to read, but it is like every single day. Swim this long. When you're thinking of swimming, have your breath at this thing. Do your strength exercises this day. Run this day, this many miles. And it was detailed to a T. And Jackson just did it. He just embraced it. He just did it. He just listened to the coach. And because of that, man, he ran that race, and he killed it. Like, he didn't just finish, but he qualified for, like, the national champion half Ironman times for people his age, which is wild. If you want to not just follow Jesus, but, like, really run this race of faith well, you got to know your playbook, and you got to have a coach. Who is someone in your life that's just a little bit wiser than you when it comes to faith? And can you ask them to help you in your own? Are you humble enough to learn from somebody else? Center your life around Christ. When I came to Arizona, it was so fun because my dad and my mom both went here. And so we had that special connection. And it just added another layer. Like, I told my dad, hey, we're doing late nights in Bear Down Gym. He was like, dude, I had an intramural championship game at Bear Down Gym. It was me and 4 other defensive backs. It was 6 feet and under. The league was 6 feet and under. So in order to play on this basketball team, you had to be under 6 feet. I'm like, that's unfortunate for me because I'm 6 foot with socks on. So I wouldn't be able to play in that league. But my dad, he's 5'11". So 6 feet and under. And he was like, me and two cornerbacks, 2 safeties, we played against this fraternity. They had like 500 people show up. They beat us. Not a big deal. But we just have this connection. And so we talk about anything and everything under the sun, like finances, fitness, family, faith. Like, we talk about it all. And I remember one day we're talking, and he's like, yeah, we almost moved to Denver twice when you were growing up. And I was like, really? Denver? Why did we not move? Because we grew up in Dallas my whole life. And he was like, well, one, the job, it would have given me more money and a higher status in my company, but it would have taken more time. And so I wouldn't have been able to coach your basketball team, your football team, you and your brother and your sister. I wouldn't have been able to be their coach. And then your mom hates the cold. So the answer was obvious. And I remember hearing that. I'm like, man, like, that's pretty cool. Like, when you think about my dad's priorities in his life, what drove his decisions, there was a clear priority hierarchy. Like, it was family and career came under that. And you could tell by the choices that he made. What is the highest priority in your life? When your schedule starts getting full, what's the first thing to go? Is it like, yo, I got school this week. I could study on Sunday and Monday and go to late night on Wednesday, but I think I'm going to take off on the Wednesday. Or maybe the first thing that is going is like, hey, my fitness, I'm not going to the gym today. I got to hunker down on these parties this week. It's just, I got to lock in. What is at the center of your life? What dictates the rest of your decisions? What is the thing that is at the center that decides how you spend your mornings, your habits that you're choosing, your nights, who you spend your time with, where you want to live, who you want to live with? What's driving those decisions? Is Christ the center of your life? You may be sitting here thinking, hey, Blake, how do I do that? Like, give me some practicals. You're all theoretical. I'm a pragmatic person. Like, how do I do this? And I would say that one way that you can make Christ the center of your life, starting this week, is to just make time for Christ. Make time for Christ. Like, when you're thinking about your day, your week, put Christ in first. And so this can look like reading the Bible. Like, hey, read the Bible every day. Pick a time in the morning. If you got early classes, go after class at lunch and read the Bible. Man, even to this day, I got to read the Bible every single day if I'm going to walk out that identity of living as a Christ follower. I need that. Maybe for you to make time for Christ, you need to meet with somebody wiser than you. This can be someone in your sorority, someone in your fraternity, someone on your football team, or even a staff member that maybe has been reaching out to you and you've just been giving them the stiff arm for the last couple of times. Hey, that's okay. Hey, it's all right to text someone back and be like, hey, I know I've been dodging you, but I do want to grow my faith. Man, pick a time every week. Monday before chapter. Hey, Wednesday at lunch. Friday on the bus ride to the game. Like, let's grow in our faith together. Maybe if you're somebody that's been walking with Jesus for a little bit, maybe the thing that you need to do to make time for Christ is to meet with somebody and help them grow. God, it's so cool in the Bible. It says spiritual maturity, they describe as somebody that teaches others. It's not just filling up our schedule and our minds with more and more knowledge, but it's taking the time to lovingly help someone else in their faith. Maybe for you, that's what you need to do to make time for Christ. And the last one, I think about looking ahead to winter break, is just going to SMC. I know you might hear that. You're like, Blake, y'all talk about this every week. It's getting annoying. Like, you talk about this every week. Look, my sophomore year, I thought the StuMo staff got paid based on how often they were recruiting me to come to SMC. I'm like, dude, if I sign up, do you get some kickback? Like, what's the deal? But I went my sophomore year, and I was like, dude, this is worth it every single winter break to like lock in these 4 days. Like, I grew so much. And we don't get a kickback if you sign up. In case you're wondering, we don't get a kickback. But man, I want that for every single person here